Okay, thank you. It's from the Haggadah, and it's really from a Mishnah in Maseches Brachos. And it goes as follows. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, Hare ani kaven shivim shana. It's as if I'm 70 years old. V'lo zachisi sheteyamer yitzias Mitzrayim ba'leilos ad shardorsha ben zoma. I was never zocha to prevail upon the Chachamim that we have to mention Yitzias Mitzrayim at nighttime as well as by daytime, until Ben Zoma came along, another one of the Tanoim, and he darshaned it from a pasuk. Now the pasuk is Laman Tizkor Es Yom Tzeischa Me'eretz Mitzrayim, in order that you will remember the day that you left Egypt, Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life. So Ben Zoma darshan, if it would have just said Yemei Chayecha, that would have been the days of your life during the daytime. But it says Kol Yemei Chayecha, and the word Kol is to teach you Lahavi Halelos, that the night times also are included. You have to mention Yetzias Mitzrayim by day and by night. So that's what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, that he had tried to convince the Chachamim to say Yetzias Mitzrayim at night and wasn't successful, that the halacha would follow him. But Ben Zoma came along and made the drasha, and that was niskabel by the Chachamim. Now let's get a little context for what's happening here. What does Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah mean when he says, it's as if I'm 70 years old? So the context of this is the following story, which happened in the Gemara. It's mentioned in Maseches Brachos. Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua had several arguments, and Rabbi Gamliel, in the establishment of his authority in a very clear way, did not want there to be machlokas. When he disagreed with Rabbi Yeshua and the halacha followed Rabbi Gamliel, a couple of times there he embarrassed Rabbi Yeshua with the strength of his arguments and even the apparently too strong demands that he made on Rabbi Yeshua. The most famous one is that they had an argument on which day Yom Kippur would fall out that year. Of course, it's the 10th day of Tishrei, but which day is Rosh Chodesh? So Rabbi Gamliel said to Rabbi Yeshua that the day that you hold is Yom Kippur. I want you to appear here in the Sanhedrin, in the Beis Midrash, with your walking stick, with your money belt, just to demonstrate that the halacha does not follow you, it follows me. And he wanted to make a very public statement about that. Now, at that point, the Chachamim felt, and they held, that Rabbi Gamliel took that too far, and they actually removed Rabbi Gamliel from his post as Nasi. So now they were on a mission to try and find who would be the Nasi. So they said, well, maybe Rabbi Yeshua himself, one of the great men of the generation. They said, that's not going to work because he is the opponent of Rabbi Gamliel in these arguments, so that's not Shalom Dik to put the opponent instead of him. That's not going to work. So they said, okay, what about Rabbi Akiva? So great, according to everybody. Everybody understood Rabbi Akiva's vast wisdom and his greatness. They said, no, we can't, because he doesn't have the zechus of us. He doesn't have the merit of his ancestors because he was a descendant of Gerim, of Gentiles. Some point along the way there, Rabbi Akiva's ancestors were Gerim, so he didn't have enough zechus of us. So they decided on Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had zechus avos. He was a descendant of Ezra HaSofer. There's actually a Gemara that says there was a person who lived long enough, it's 10 generations, from Ezra HaSofer all the way to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And when he saw Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he said to him that you resemble in your eyes your ancestor, Ezra HaSofer, who he remembered from 10 generations earlier. So we had that zechus avos. He was also very wealthy, and you needed to be wealthy because the Nasi sometimes would have to meet with the emperor. The emperor wouldn't talk to anybody who was not a wealthy person. And he was, of course, vastly wise. So they offered the position to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and like all wise men, he said, let me go home and talk it over with my wife. That in itself should have, got him the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, right? So he goes home and talks about it with his wife, and one of her concerns is that he is very young. How old was he? At the time, he was 18 years old. She said, maybe they won't show you the proper respect. So overnight, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had a miracle that was done for him. The next day, he woke up with rows of gray in his hair, in his beard. And that was a siman min hashamayim, that even though he was only 18 years old, he would be given the proper respect. So he accepted the position. Now that's the context of this story. Now, just by the way, Rabbi Gamliel eventually, in a short time, apologized to Rabbi Yeshua. They brought Rabbi Gamliel back on as the Nasi, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah served once every 3 weeks, because you can't just demote him for nothing. Malin b'kodesh vein moridin. So it's a 3-week, 1-week rotation between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. But in the meantime, this is the context of the story here. This is when Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, Harei ani kaven shivim shana. So the question, behold, it's as if I'm 70 years old. The question which Rabbi Twerski had is, what's the connection between that comment and saying, I tried to prevail upon the Chachamim to say Yetzias Mitzrayim by nighttime, and I wasn't successful until Ben Zoma came along and made the drasha. What's the connection between those two incidents? They seem to be unrelated. So Rabbi Twerski says as follows. He says that you can see from the language of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that he was really trying to prevail upon the Chachamim, because he said, I didn't have the zechus. I wasn't able to merit to have the halacha like me. He was trying very hard. Nonetheless, they were not makabelet from him, only from Ben Zoma. So Rabbi Twerski says, because every person has a unique chelek and contribution that they make to Torah, and if one person simply cannot contribute that which somebody else is meant to contribute, we cannot infringe on somebody else's contribution to Torah. Even if we want to, God's not going to let that happen. Now, when we say contribution to Torah, we mean not only in learning and in teaching, but it means our very specific way in Jewish life, in Torah life, cannot be replicated by anybody else. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, it's as if I was 70 years old. Meaning, so Rabbi Twerski says, here is a man who was so great that at the age of 18 years old, he had an open miracle done for him. His hair changed color to white overnight. He was a very great man. Nonetheless, that particular halacha of mentioning Yetzias Mitzrayim at nighttime, that was not Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's chelek in Torah. It was not meant to be his contribution in Torah. It was the contribution of Ben Zoma. So when Ben Zoma came along and said the drasha, min hashamayim, the Chachamim were now makabelet, but not from Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It wasn't his chelek in Torah. No matter how great a person is, even one that miracles are done for him, you cannot infringe on somebody else's. Not that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was trying to, he was just trying to say the halacha, but it wasn't happening. And Rabbi Twerski is teaching us, perhaps this is the reason why. So that's the relationship between him saying, Harei ani kaven shivim shana, and the second part regarding mentioning Yetzias Mitzrayim at nighttime. Now, just one way to bring this forward to us, I think, relative to Pesach, of course, all the time, but specifically on Pesach, is I think that Cherus, and Pesach being Zman Cherusenu, is when a person is able to see, feel, perceive that they really have something to contribute. Yeah, something to contribute. I'm a free person. God gave me this bechira to be able to put forth that which he wants me to do. So why do we mention this dafka at the Seder? One part, of course, because it mentioned Yetzias Mitzrayim. But I think even more than that, I shouldn't say more than that, but in addition to that, the idea that this is part of Cherus, to be able to express one's chelik in Torah is an expression of freedom. This is that which God gave me in the world, and we are a ben chorin to be able to contribute it. May we all be able to contribute our own chelik in Torah, B'ezras Hashem. Okay, so that was that mimer, and I'd like to take a few questions from the oilam if you have any. You can either raise your hand and I'll unmute you, or you can unmute yourself, whichever you like. Is that Michael Druk there with the question there? Hold on, Michael.
This allows us basically to participate in the Passover Seder, basically.
Let's start over again. I didn't hear you, please.
This basically allows us to participate in the Passover Seder by each of us contributing. Is there a relationship? There's a relationship there.
That's a very nice thought, right? The idea that every person at the table has something to say, has something meaningful to contribute, and in that respect, it allows us to do so. Very nice. Yasher Koach. Anybody else? Any other comments on that? Jonathan, you're trying to unmute yourself there?
Is it obvious? Yes. So
go ahead, John.
There's something about they say the pay and the word Pesach and the mouth expressing itself. Is there? Am I recalling that accurately? No.
Yes, you are. I'll just say it for you before we continue. So the word Pesach, which we pronounce Pesach, but it's Pesach really. If you divide that into two, this Forum HaKadoshim say it's Pesach, the mouth which speaks. So our speech is liberated on Pesach night. Okay, go ahead, John. That's the background.
So I'm just thinking that there's the connection between our being liberated enough to express our portion of Torah, like you were saying, and this, yes, that the mouth speaking, that the somehow how we're liberated is that we're more free to express ourselves somehow. Beautiful. Maybe it's the horseradish.
I thought you were going to say the 4 cups of wine, but I guess the horseradish has a greater effect.
I think you're right about that. Yeah, I think that's
a
more
nice
like
idea, John. That's part of the liberation and why we're able to experience Pesach, our own mouth, which now expresses our chelik in Torah. Yeshkach, beautiful.
Thank you.
Andy, please. Let me just unmute you. You want to unmute yourself, Andy? If not, I will.
Here we go.
You got it? Okay.
I had some strange computer stuff going on. When Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was offered the position, he went to consult with his wife. Now, I was present at a shiur where there were a couple people who were discussing this, and they said that he had to speak with her because there's certain things that she had to give up, that she had to give up ona, she had to give up her time with him in certain ways. She's entitled to a certain ona, a certain amount of time with her, with him, and so on. And that there are issues of money, and they had a whole bunch of different things that she had to give up and so on. And I said, well, maybe also he just wanted her advice. Should I take this on?
Right.
And these two people said, oh, no, he was a very great man. He wouldn't have needed to do that. And I would like to get your reaction to that.
My reaction to that is that to me, it's just Pashut Pshat in the Gemara that he was asking for her input. And there's no mention of the other things in the Gemara. You could say that for halachic reasons, he needed to talk it over with her because she'd had to be giving certain things up if he's now going to be in a public position. I mean, we definitely hear that. But just in terms of the Pashut Pshat in the Gemara, she is bringing things up that are input to this decision. And for example, this very thing which we're saying here about his age, she is concerned about his kavod. Maybe they won't show him the proper respect. That's mamish talking it over with his wife. So I certainly think Lefi Hapshat, we're talking about that he wants to get her input into this position and whether or not that's the right thing for him. That's how it seems to me. And the fact that he's a great man, a great man needs to discuss things with his wife. Doesn't bother him from discussing things with his wife. All great men do. Okay. Now, just a cute story about this. It's a pretty well-known story that a long time in our lifetimes, but Rav Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, he used to answer his own phone. Shilas, people would come in. And he one time got a telephone call, and somebody asked Rav Moshe, what's the bracha on a pretzel? So they overheard him turning to his wife, Rebbitzin, what is a pretzel? Said to his wife, what's a pretzel? So she answers him, das ist a Mezainis. So he answered back, it's a Mazonos.
Rabbi.
Okay. Yes, Ellie, please.
Rabbi?
Thank you, Andy.
2 points. This seems to dovetail with the issue with Rabbi Gamliel, that he didn't show Yeshua his respect of his Torah.
Interesting. Very interesting thought.
Also, the during Sphere, the Rabbi Kiva's students were dying. I think the same reason, because they weren't showing covet to each other. They weren't appreciating each other's Torah. I think that's the same idea, that they missed that point too. That's
very good, Ellie. I really think that's both of those are excellent comments, and particularly the first one seems to really dovetail off of the whole story itself. Shikoch, excellent. Okay, I'm going to go to the next mimer, and then we'll perhaps get a few more questions following that one. This is something Rabbi Twerski said over, and I always like to share it as well because there's so many applications to it regarding people and the nature of the human personality. So it goes as follows. This is from the Haggadah. Keneged arba abanim dibra Torah. The Torah speaks corresponding to 4 different sons. Echad chacham ve'echad rasha, ve'echad tam ve'echad she'enu yodea lishol. One is wise, one is wicked, one is simple, and one does not know how to ask a question. L'chora haba le'lomar, echad chacham v'hasheni rasha, etc. Apparently, the way the Haggadah should have stated it, that there are 4 sons. The first was a chacham, the second was a rasha, the third was a tam, the fourth was she'enu yodea lishol. Why does it say echad, 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 echad? It's constantly saying this one, but it's using the number 1, 1, 1, 1. Why does the Haggadah express it in that way? Uma lashon echad chacham ve'echad rasha. Why say it in that way? Ela hakavanahu, but the intention is shehem kulam ish echad, that we're really talking about one person. Ki be'emes yesh b'chol adam kol arba'a bechinos elu. Every person has all 4 dimensions within him. V'tzorich litain teshuva l'chol bechina v'fi darko. And a person has to give an answer to each dimension of their personality according to that specific part of themselves. So Rabbi Twerski Zatzal is saying we all have inside of us a Chacham, a Rasha, a Tam, Ein Yodea Lishol. These are 4 parts to each person's own personality. We have that within us. Now, what about the part where he comments that you have to answer to each one according to its way? So, Lamashal, let's say that a person is talking to a wise, intelligent person, and they ask a very intelligent, insightful question. So you have to give over an answer accordingly, which will have a sound intellectual basis, well thought out, proper analysis. Let's say that someone is asking a very simple question. Like, for example, in the Haggadah, he says, Mazos, what is this? So there's no mention of what the question is, and are you comparing one thing to another thing? Is there some kind of contradiction you're trying to resolve? It's just, Mazos, what is this? So that kind of question needs a different kind of answer. Now let's say a Russia, and I'm just going to say one way to look at this. Sometimes a person asks a question, and the question is being driven not by their intellect, not by their curiosity, but the question is driven by the Yetzer Hara. In other words, they have some type of issue, a Yetzer Hara type issue with something in the Torah, and that really is where the question is coming from. For example, maybe they feel like their ego is being challenged by the Torah, and they're trying to assert their ego over the Torah. Now, lav davka, that person is a Rasha, but we're talking about a bad midah. Or let's say, for example, a person wants to assert himself over other people in an unjust way. So their question is coming from there. An intellectual answer is not going to do the trick. That's not where they're coming from. They're coming from a place of either ego or insecurity, or they're coming from a place of self-gratification and self-indulgence, and it's touching on some negative parts in their own personality, which is producing the question. So what we have to know is, what is really bothering this person? And it takes an insightful human being to try and take a deep look and see what the question on the surface is, but really more so, what's going on beneath the surface? What's really the question? So in my experience, oftentimes people are asked a particular kind of question. It's quite clear to me that what they're saying is, I'm in pain, please help me. I'm not talking about the Russia now, I'm just moving on to a similar topic. The question is posed with a disguise of the question, either intentionally or completely unintentionally. And the format of the question is one thing, but the real question is, I'm hurting, can you help me? Can you possibly help my life be better? So if we take that and we look at that inside of ourselves, the way Rabbi Twerski is saying here, when we have a question internally, not a question coming from somebody else, but internally, we have to look at that and ask ourselves, where is my question coming from? Is this an intellectual question? I need an intellectual answer. Is this an emotional question? Is this a curiosity question? Is this just, I want to know the meaning of this, very simple meaning of this? Where's it coming from? And by being able to understand our question and where it's coming from, we'll then be much more likely to respond to our own question internally. Where is it coming from? Likewise, when it comes to the Seder table, people have pointed out all these 4 people, they're at the Seder table. The Rosh is at the table too. There's also an answer to him. everybody has an answer, everybody has a place. So just like we would like to inside of ourselves discover where is my question coming from, we want to look at another person sincerely, honestly, authentically, with compassion. Where is his question coming from? And give the answer accordingly to the best of our abilities. So therefore, Echad Chacham, Echad Rasha, Echad Tam, Echad Shani Yadeh Lishol, they're all different parts to our personality. We need to address them in ourselves and to try our best to address them in somebody else when they come our direction. Okay, I'll take a couple of questions on that or comments. Howard, go ahead. Let me just, you want to unmute yourself, Howard? Thank you.
Just a yashik koyach to your Rabbi for that insight and how you've explained it this year, even with more and more depth as each time we've come across this. Yashik koyach.
Thank you.
Rabbi?
Yes, please.
How do you understand, I have a question. How do you understand the one that doesn't know how to say a question?
Say it again.
The one that doesn't know how to answer a question, how do you understand him in this context?
You're talking about the Eni Yodeh Lishol?
Yeah, how do you understand him? He's not even,
So I think really just as the Haggadah says, At Pesach Lo, you are obligated, we are obligated to find the opening in that person. He doesn't know how to ask. Okay, that's where he's coming from.
Uh-huh.
He's coming from, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to ask. So we got to try and find a way to bring that out of him or her so we can respond to it properly.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Moshe, want to unmute yourself, Moshe?
Hello.
How are you, Moshe?
Hey, how are you, Baruch Hashem? Good.
Excellent.
My question is this concept of the four different people within each individual, and the question emanating from the individual is like that. There's a concept like mirroring, like if a person is coming with a particular type of feeling to answer back in that same type of kind of wavelength type of thing in order to, I guess, to acknowledge and empathize or show that same, that you get where they're coming from and that you're at their level. How does that relate to this? And is that related? Is it a different thing? I don't know. Just a.
Thank you. I just have to turn something off in the background here. 1 second. Okay, thank you. Okay, Moshe, I apologize. Would you please just say that one more time?
Sure. Yeah. I was just saying that this concept that every individual has this piece of, each of the four of the Arbabanim is within each individual.
Yeah.
And that the question that they're asking is coming from whatever, situation they're coming from. My question is more like there's this concept of like mirroring that which a question that's coming to you and to come show them that you're at their wavelength, that you're coming from their same level, and kind of acknowledging that that vibe or that place that they're coming from, and to answer in that way. Is that, I guess, just asking regarding is that related? Is that what this is, or is there?
Yeah, so I think that there's two levels to this. So one is what you mentioned as mirroring, and you're identifying with what the person is asking, and you're trying to reflect back to them according to that. So on one level, that is what we're trying to do. That would be true. Now there's another level which is you're trying to get through to what that person is really asking. So if one is attempting, to mirror and reflect back to an individual that which they're asking, and they're getting it on one level, so that's good, it's effective. But if we have good ears, and we have good antenna, we may be able to discern that there is a deeper question there. And then we want to try and get to that and then mirror that. We're trying to address that deeper question. So it may be there and it may not be there. There may not be a deeper question. It might just be what's on the surface. B, if there is a deeper question, we may not be able to get to it because it requires a lot of insight and intuition and experience. But if we can, and it's a person who we have a sense of relationship with that's been built and developed, I think we can often get to the deeper level of the question for that person. And that's where we're trying to go. That's what we're trying to get to.
I have a question or something to say.
Yes, John?
So I was thinking that one of the ways that Pesach helps us to have language is the Haggadah, that basically, thinking about how the simple person who doesn't know how to ask is partly because they don't have language for what it is, or even if you lack a language, then you lack an opening. So I'm thinking that that's what it is. The Haggadah gives us that language that helps to free us, basically. Somehow.
Well, John, I think that you once again hit on target with both comments that you had tonight in the realm of Pesach. Mm-hmm. One was the ability to experience one's own liberation of speech, and perhaps the other is to experience that of another and seeing where they're coming from in their self-expression. And as we're going through the Haggadah, of course, means to tell over, to say it over. Everybody at that table is experiencing this. And now we're trying to express it, respond to it, hear it, listen to it, like all of the above. Thank you. Michael, please. Let me just unmute you. You unmuting yourself?
Let me see here.
Okay, I got it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. It seems that every time I go to a Passover Seder, I start this trouble. It is not trouble. Let me tell you the incident and where I'm coming from, and this does relate to what you were saying before. There is a Haggadah that refers to the simple son as a simpleton. Not a simple son, but a simpleton. The English definition of the word simpleton means an ignoramus, a stupid person. The simple son is not a stupid person. He just doesn't know, maybe not know how to ask the question. Maybe he doesn't know as much as he should, but he's asking the question because he wants to learn and he wants to know. Okay, your picture's disappeared here. Okay.
I can still see you.
Okay. All right. Now, if the person who represents all four people, including the simple son, he asks intelligent questions. He next goes down to the next rung and all the way down the line. If he comes and asks a simple question, he's still as intelligent as he was before. He's not stupid. He's not ignorant. Okay. Therefore, the word simpleton does not pertain to the fourth son. It should be the word simple.
Okay.
I'm just making that as a statement.
What you're talking about is actually, addressed by some of the commentators. What does the word tam mean? So if we say it means simple, not simpleton, but simple,
Okay.
then it's an uncomplicated question, but it's truly a real question, and it needs to be addressed and answered. It may not be a question that's based on intellectual depth, but it's a real, solid, insightful question. That's tough. That's simple. Uncomplicated, we could say. And uncomplicated is not a negative. Now, there's even a higher level than that, because the word tam in the Torah is actually a great expression of praise. Yaakov Avinu, our patriarch Jacob, is described as Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim, a pure person who dwelled in the tents of Torah. And there are those who want to say that really the Tam is that person. He's a very pure, clean-hearted individual, and he's a very seeking person. He wants to know, what is this? What's going on here? Kind of like we mentioned the other day, last week, going into the Seder with a completely open mind. What is this all about?
Mm-hmm.
So Tam can be viewed in different ways. I think I'm not so fond of the translation of simpleton, because it does make it sound like he's a fool, which in English comes across that way. And I think simple is a more accurate translation, and can mean one of those two things that we just mentioned.
Right, thank you. Okay.
Also, by the way, for Rabbosai, maybe many of you are aware of this, but Rabbeinu Tam, right, one of the greatest, considered by many to be the greatest of all the Baalei HaTosfos. So how did he get that name, Rabbeinu Tam? It wasn't his name. So his name was Yaakov. His name was Yaakov. So he was so great and so pure that just like Yaakov Avinu was called Ish Tam, they called this great person Rabbeinu Yaakov, Rabbeinu Tam.
Wasn't he the grandson of
that name to be a great expression of praise, comparing him to Yaakov Avinu, Rabbeinu Tam.
Wasn't he the grandson of Rashi?
Yes, he was. One of the great, very, very great and influential Baalei HaTosfos grandsons of Rashi.
Yeah, from the house of David. Yeah.
Now I see Dov has a blue hand on the screen, so I want to. Dov actually raised his hand on my screen with a blue hand. So Dov, you want to say something there?
Sure. And you know, with our bunch of Hasidim, it's very hard to just raise your hand. Decided I wanted to follow the rules. I'm a real rule follower.
Oh, right, right.
So if these are all aspects of our personality, so in terms of avodas Hashem, so where does our rishus fit in? Where's the Russia aspect of ourselves fit in terms of avodas Hashem?
It's a great question. So we say in Kriya Shema, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol modecha. So b'chol levavecha means with all of your hearts. It's a lashon Rabbi, plural. And the Chachamim say with your Yetzer HaTov and with your Yetzer HaRa. You have to love Hashem with both. So what does that mean? So one way to understand that is that whatever Ra that we have inside of ourselves is part of our own personality, and our objective in this world, our goal in this world, is to try and understand it, channel it, prevail over it, conquer it, all those things. We're able to serve Hashem through our Yetzer Hara by being able to master our Yetzer Hara. And each person has that in their very specific way, in their own personality, how to master their own Yetzer Hara. If it was a one-size-fits-all, we wouldn't have to have 100 different Musars for him. We could have one, and it would tell everybody how to conquer the Yetzer Hara. We wouldn't have to have all the insights of Hasidus for him. We would just have one basic insight: how does a person conquer the Yetzer Hara? But we know we have hundreds of insights into our attempt to do this. So I think it's coming to understand where one's Yetzer Hara is strong personally, and then B, doing what we have to do in order to prevail over it in our life. By doing that, we are conquering or prevailing over our Yetzer Hara. That's how we serve Hashem with our Yetzer Hara. And it's revealing to us parts of our personality that need to be either channeled or conquered, directed properly. We wouldn't have that revelation of self without the Yetzer Hara. It's bringing forward some of the things in us that need to have tikkun. A very beautiful insight from the Sfas Emes in Parshas Mitzorah, where he says the meaning of the word Mitzorah brings us from other Sforim HaKadoshim too, is motzi ra. Something bad has surfaced. So the Mitzorah is a person who has these blemishes on their body. They're representative of a spiritual illness, the Chachamim say, and they have to do tshuva in order to be misakein that. So the Sfas Emes asks the following question. We know that the Mitzorah has to go to a Kohen. The Kohen has to look at the blemish, the nega, and say tameh or tohar. If someone else says tameh or tohar, it's of no consequence. Even a Talmud Chacham, if he looks at it and says, doesn't matter, it's got to be a Kohen. So the Sfas Emes asks a question, and he says, I understand why the Kohen has to say tohar, because that's what Kohanim are all about, tahara. But why does the Kohen have to issue the word tameh? That's not consistent with the job and the identity of a Kohen. Let somebody else say tameh. Why does he say tameh? So the Sfas Emes answers as follows. Anytime a person sees something bad, negative inside of themselves, then we have to look at that as a gift from Hashem. That God opened up our eyes to something in our personality we had not previously seen. And he said, when we do see that, then Hashem is telling us, he's giving us a message. I'm showing this to you now, because now I know that you're prepared to deal with it. You've reached a stage in your life where you can deal with this. So we're grateful to Hashem for motzi ra, for bringing that ra, Yetzer Hara aspect to the surface where we can see it. And that's tameh, meaning to say, I know that that's tameh. But that's the step to getting to tohar. I can't get to tohar if I don't first say tameh. So the Kohen is the one who says tameh, because that's not the end game. The end game is, I know it's tameh, how do I make it tohar? I think it's the same thing here, that when we see something in ourselves that's negative, it's a gift from Hashem. We want to look at it, see what it is, go through the avodah that's necessary to prevail over it, meaning to make it tohar, to transform ourselves into a greater person. A big part of our avodas Hashem takes place in that part of our personality.
Rabbi?
Thank you.
Yosef, yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay. Two questions about what you said about the four sons.
Go ahead.
The first question is, how exactly do we have inside of ourselves? So you think is what you just said of the four sons in ourselves, like the wise, the Rasha, and the simple one, and the ignorant one. How is that exactly in that with us?
Well, what Rabbi Twerski is trying to say is that people have different parts to their personality. It's not just one-dimensional personality. And in that way, those four things are part of each person.
Okay. Second question is, who was the first one who invented the four sons?
Well, it's actually in the Torah itself, because the Torah has the remez. It doesn't say explicitly Chacham, Rasha, etc., but the Chachamim derive from the Torah itself that there are four different sons, and we get this really from the Torah She'ba'al Peh, and the Baal Haggadah places those words of our Chachamim about what each different son is like and puts it into the Haggadah.
I see.
And Harold, let me take one more, then we'll stop. Harold, because you're a therapist, and this really is a psychologically based of our Torah, I think that it's important that we call on you here.
Well, this will not be a psychological, but more a grammatical. You made a slip of the tongue, which I think is Gewalt. When Michael's discussion about Ish Tam and what does that mean in English, and you accidentally said the translation is the problem. So Ish Tam, I'll say that again.
You thought that was accidental?
All right, thank you. Boy, you're right. I underestimated. So yeah, so I think that's worth the price of admission. Translation, because that comes up so often. And when Michael was saying, what is in Ish Tam? And Ish Tam is really an Ish Tam. We try to search for English, but it's really Ish Tam. So,
excellent. Okay, I know there probably are some more comments, but I want to wish everybody a good Tanakh, a good night, and may we see B'ezras Hashem a refuah shalema for all the Choli Yisrael and a geula shalema lana u'lecha Yisrael. Wishing everybody a very, very good night. All the best.
Okay, thanks.
I'm going to unmute you so we can say Erev Tov. There we go. Good night, everybody.
Erev Tov. Night.
Night.
Right.
Erev Tov.
Erev Tov. Erev Tov.
Erev Tov.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Take care. Kol Tuv, everybody.